When I got here in 1993, right out of the bars on Cedar Springs, I was minding my own business. I had let church go. I was singing, I had a song about Marcia Brady. It was so... It was really off color. I'm just going to say that. And Marty Bacher, who was Petra's predecessor, he was down there looking for talent. And I know that he was really into the music, and I thought on my break he was going to ask me out on a date, and he put a $5 tip in my jar, and he asked me to come sing at church. And I thought, what kind of a church has their minister come to the gay piano bar looking for talent? And I thought, this may be my church.
Lots of you know this fabulous man on the piano, and for many of you it needs no introduction, but an introduction is always important for those of you who don't know Michael, but mostly to welcome him to our piano and to our platform, both as musician and minister and friend and beloved one. So for those of you who don't know, I did a little introduction for last night at the concert, which was fabulous, by the way. CS. And we really got to experience Michael's soul through his music. Today you'll get some of that, but also his heart and his inspiration through his message. So, there's lots of things I could say, and I do believe that I was corrected last night. Michael's been, but he was with us. Yeah, it was good, though, because you blink and time goes by, right? So Michael was trained in Oral Roberts University, comes out of Oklahoma, and the Pentecostal tradition. And he was invited to play on the piano at CSLDallas by the previous minister before me, and he was found at the local bar, and everybody, and it was but he was making a mark there. So he came to the piano. I was fortunate enough to come a few weeks later to Dallas, and that was the beginning of something really wonderful that Michael and I grew together here. And he left his print on CSLDallas in a big way. So Michael was our musician and then music director for 16 years. 10 years ago, he became a minister, became a practitioner, then a minister. He went on to Reno, Nevada for a few years, and then Unity of Houston. And Michael is now the senior minister there. He's been there 8 years. He's been the senior minister for 2. And during that time, Michael and I have learned and grown together. We've sharpened our intellectual understanding of science of mind together. We have deepened our experience of the presence together. We have practiced together. And I'm grateful to say that we continue to do so. And it means the world to me. And it's one of my deepest joys and biggest supports. And it is my privilege and pleasure to support this man and his ministry in Houston, doing this amazing work and all the work that you do around the world. And I'm so grateful that you're here with us today. I love you so much.
I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. So another way that time has flown by, I wrote this particular song for Petra for her 10th anniversary as senior minister, and that was almost 15 years ago, whenever it was, so time goes so quickly. But this is, some of you may know that she has a signature phrase when she's teaching, when she's striving for clarity, she wants you to get it. And she says, "Do you see?" Have you ever found yourself lost and set adrift, wandering through your life with no direction? Well, I have, yes, I have. And in this time when you were lost, have you ever had the strength to reach out to somebody who could help you? Well, I have, thank God I have. I found a teacher and a friend who helped me on my way. She lifted me into the light, and gently she would say, do you see, you are more than you believe yourself to be. Do you know there's a power in your hand? There is nothing in this world to keep you from your destiny. You are not blind, you are not bound, no, you are free. Do you see? Have you ever known the joy of returning to yourself? Awakening to life after the darkness? Well, I have, oh yes, I have. And when you were restored, have you ever turned around and helped someone who needed strength and guidance? Well, I have. I became the teacher and the friend to someone who could not see. I have passed along that love and light my teacher gave to me. And I said, do you see? You are more than you believe yourself to be. Do you know there's a power in your hand? There is nothing in this world to keep you from your destiny. You are not blind, you are not bound, no, you are free. Do you see? Have you ever had the chance to say some word of thanks to this one who has given so much to you? Well, I have, right now, I have. Thank you. You have given me your love. You have shared with me your light. You've given me your clarity of sight. You are a partner, teacher, guide, and friend. My beautiful friend. This is who you are. This is what you mean to me. I'm really asking you, do you see?
I'm so glad you joined us today. That makes you a part of CSL Dallas, and we love that our community continues to grow. And we also love to give great spiritual content. And a way that you can participate in our community is financially give to it. It's easy to do so. Go to CSLDallas.org and hit the give button. Or you can set up a text giving mechanism at 972-954-4404, a safe and secure way to send us money whenever you watch a great message like this. So thanks for giving, and buckle up, because here comes the spiritual content.
Well, according to the menu I was given, we're already 27 minutes behind schedule, and I have 20 minutes to talk. So thank you. Okay, I have 20 minutes. What to say? Well, I was taught how to do this by Petra Weldes. So a joke, 3 points, and a poem coming your way. Talking to a friend of mine, and she was telling me how glad she is to live in this time, this information age, and how all of her favorite music is always accessible, all the movies she wants to see, all the books she wants to read, just right there. And she said, I don't know what my parents did before the internet to keep from getting bored. And I asked my 19 brothers and sisters, and they didn't know either. Think about it. You got it. All right. You're quick. Which has nothing to do with what I want to say. That is the title, What One Person Can Do. So Petra made me promise that I wouldn't spend the entire 20 minutes talking about her and embarrassing her by telling her how wonderful she is, but I have to do a little bit of that. When I got here, in 1993, right out of the bars on Cedar Springs, I was minding my own business. I had let church go. I was singing, I had a song about Marcia Brady. It was so... It was really off color. I'm just going to say that. And Marty Bacher, who was Petra's predecessor, he was down there looking for talent, and I know that he was really into the music, and I thought on my break he was going to ask me out on a date, and he put a $5 tip in my jar, and he asked me to come sing at church. And I thought, what kind of a church has their minister come to the gay piano bar looking for talent? And I thought, this may be my church. 26 years later, this is still my church. And Petra got here shortly after I did, and we had she was our interim minister after Marty left, and then we hired another minister, Reverend Claudia Franklin, who was instrumental in my path and in my story. And then when she left, Petra became our interim minister again, and then we went to coffee at Starbucks at Lover's Lane. I remember that over there, and we were sitting. She said, Michael, I want to ask you something. What would you think if instead of, because you were interviewing with trucking companies, I remember this, you had graduated, you needed to make an income, and you were just going to go, and you thought, really, is that what I need to do? And you said, what would you think, Michael, if I applied to be the senior minister of, at the time it was First Church of Religious Science, Dallas, Texas. And I thought, I said, I think that would be great. And turns out we didn't even have to interview her because she was already on staff. The board just voted to promote her into this position, and then that began the journey for both of us. You had already done so much more of your healing work. I was brand new. I started this teaching of New Thought and Science of Mind the same year I began, haltingly and not perfectly, my recovery path from alcoholism. And the two have been instrumental, but it was this woman right here who, oh my gosh, delivered these principles to me in a way that they were not just words on a page. The first time, I don't know about you, the first time I tried to read The Science of Mind, it may as well have been in, another language, Turkish. I really couldn't make heads or tails of it. I needed a teacher. I needed someone to explain how when we put these principles into our lives and we act upon them, that we change. Our awareness of who we are and how the world works shifts, and we begin to demonstrate things. My very first Science of Mind, Spiritual Mind treatment was for a better gig. I was working at Bill's Hideaway down on Buena Vista. Fun bar. If you ever got a chance to go down there, it was fun. But I was working there, and I knew I wanted a better gig, and within a couple of months, I was working at the mansion on Turtle Creek, and was like, dang, this stuff works. I was hooked. And I began to take classes and shared the ups and the downs of my life with Petra Weldes. And she and I have been able to hold multiple strands of relationship. She was my boss, she was my minister, she was my teacher, and she was also my friend and confidant. And so many tears and so many laughs. We have had a great time. And I began to take these classes, and my life began to change and improve. And then I remember with you, Lainey Bernstein, you and I were doing music for an Al-Anon convention, and we were sitting and having a bite of dinner in the little hotel bar there, and we were having chicken Caesar salad, dressing on the side. And you were having a moment of great self-doubt, which was not your first or your last moment of self-doubt. And I saw through all of this stuff she was doing to the truth of her gift. And I thought, crap, I'm a practitioner. And so I took the practitioner training, and then Petra started nagging me about ministerial school. I know she's doing that to some of you right now. And I was like, nope, I don't want to do that. I want to do music. I've got a cool job. You know that thing where you're sitting on a plane and somebody asks you what you do? I did not want to say I'm a minister. Although I heard a UU minister once have an answer to that, and he was be on a plane, and somebody will say, what do you do? I'm a minister. And they'll be, I don't believe in God. And his response was always, tell me about this God you don't believe in, because chances are I don't believe in him either. But it became apparent. That's a good one. We can applaud the UUs. We love Unitarians. It became apparent that this was the next step for me too. And man, did that bring up my stuff, those 3 years of ministerial school. Everything, and that's, the old metaphysicians had a term called chemicalization. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but here's the way it works. When you decide for a greater yet to be for yourself, you're going to step into something that is a dream and desire of your heart for a new level of freedom and fulfillment. Everything in you that doesn't believe that's possible is going to be right here. The term chemicalization is like what happens when you break up the sediment at the bottom of a pond. All of that gunk just comes up. It has to be broken up. But that's what happens. How many of you have experienced that? And in Unity, there's a great book called Lessons in Truth by Emily Cady, and they actually took the chapter, the passage out about chemicalization in the 70s and 80s because they thought it was too negative, and people were still having it happen anyway, so they put it back in. But I went through a lot of that. And I have often said I have a lot of friends and colleagues throughout the New Thought movement, and I believe that I had the greatest, the best ministerial training of anyone I know. Partly because we had this great master's degree program through Holmes Institute at the time, through CSL, but mostly because all of our nuts and bolts, how to do a ministry kind of classes, most of them were taught by this lady right here, who still young, it's like not even 50, and she had been doing ministry for 25 years. Such experience and such clarity. So I will tell you one more thing about what Petra has given to me. I am a people pleaser from way back. Middle child, it was my job to see what my family needed from me, and I would be that. And so I got really good at holding secrets, not telling the truth, and hiding behind anything I could rather than have the difficult conversation. That doesn't work with her. I don't know if you know this. It doesn't. And so many times she took me by the hand and took me into her office, and we sat down and we had the conversation that neither one of us wanted to have, but needed to happen. And you taught me how to do that. And I am twice the minister I would be if it weren't for that, because I've been able to bring my heart for wanting people to be loved and feel good and secure, and to hold their hands and have the conversation with them that they don't want to have. They don't want it to happen, and I don't want it to happen, but it needs to happen. So, is that enough gushing? Okay, good. You are incredible. And there's another saying, I don't know where it comes from, one of the traditions says, it's good to dig many wells, but it's better to dig one deep well. and to give so many of your years in this body that you've been given to this community, to building something that is lasting. And it's not the place, in case you haven't figured out, it's the people. So many of us have been trained by Petra, have been nurtured by this community and launched. She tithes us out into the world. So I'm talking today really about spiritual evolution, and in case you haven't noticed, it's built in. You can't stay the same. It doesn't work. Life will conspire for your good, and if you're having one of those holy come-apart seasons, God bless you. But that is life working on your behalf to call you forward into a new way of being. I think about, in Unity, we have much less allergy to Jesus and the Bible. I don't know if you knew that, but we have a greater comfort level in the culture in Unity with traditional Christian elements, and particularly the Bible and Jesus and the elder brother, the great way shower, the great teacher, the master teacher, not the Savior for our sins. But there's a great story in the Gospels. It's recorded several different ways where most of Jesus' disciples, they were not learned scholars. They were not men who were well-versed in the law. They were simple men. They were fishermen, many of them, in the Sea of Galilee. And there's a story in Matthew where Jesus walked up to Simon and his brother Andrew, who were fishing. And Jesus said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Nothing in their experience would have prepared them for the life that was to come. Nothing. And it says, I think there had to be more to it than the story records, but just that they dropped their nets and they followed the master teacher. My point to you, and this is meant to be encouraging, but it may scare the hell out of you. You can't get there from here. The things that have given you stability and security in your life will not take you to the place that God is asking you to come to. All of the structures that we put in place mentally, emotionally, relationally, the ways that we place ourselves here so that we feel good and secure and I can live from here. You can't stay there. It's just not the way it works. You will be called to, and all of those things not all, many of them will break apart and fall away. And it hurts like hell. And yet it frees you up to step into something new. And here's the great thing about it, because what's really being revealed in this evolutionary path is our essence, our true nature. The next thing will fit you even better. It will feel even more right to your soul. The work that you'll be doing will be amazingly a better fit for your gifts and talents and even your faults. There's a great thing, I love the 12-step traditions as well, and there's a great thing in the 6th and 7th steps, which are all about removing our character defects, which I know we're not defective, but we do pick up some pretty interesting habits, don't you think? And so I pray that God remove every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows, to God and my fellow human beings. See, some of your quirks and your limitations, God can use them until that part is done. But the journey, as I'm discovering it, 26 years into this teaching, 20 years sober this fall, what I'm discovering is it says it right on page 1 of the Science of Mind textbook. The divine plan is one of freedom. It's all about releasing that which is no longer needed and trusting life, falling into love, falling into something that you really don't know what it's going to look like or how it's going to. Houston, really? How is that going to work? I mean, not even on my radar. And yet such a gift that has been offered to me. And that's just the way it works. There's another Bible verse I'd like to share with you. This comes from, I have such a love-hate relationship with the Apostle Paul. Amen? You know who I'm talking about? some of the misogyny and the homophobic stuff in there, I don't get it at all. But then these mystical bombs just kind of land in the middle of it too. I actually have 2 tattoos and they're both Paul. I know it's weird. But this is 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, 17 and 18. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, which is the Spirit. Let me break that down for you. God is not a guy on a throne in heaven. You know that? God is principle and presence. Ernest Holmes said the 2 great pillars of New Thought are love and law, and ultimately it's all love. It's the nature of reality. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Because when we really become who we are already, all of those things that would inhibit us are gone, and we're free. Free to be, free to give our gifts fully, and free to receive the abundant life Jesus talked about. And the next phrase where it says, and we who with unveiled faces, you get that? We're removing the false identities, the limiting beliefs. We contemplate the glory of the Lord, contemplate the true nature of reality. We are transformed into that, because that is what we are. And in the King James, it says, from glory unto glory. So even though we may have to give up everything familiar and safe upon this evolutionary spiritual journey, it's not a bad gig. From glory unto glory, with greater and greater degrees of freedom and fulfillment. Sign you up? Yes? That's what it's about. The rewards are so great. And it's worth it. You will get stuck in weird alleyways. You will find yourselves with people on the journey that you did not invite, but they're your people. You will find yourself in some really strange places that you did not know were yours. But if you stay open, oh my gosh, the glories you will reveal. And some of the old ideas, they are really deep. They go back to childhood and before. I'd like to introduce my beloved John Moore. You want to stand, everybody see how cute you are, John Moore, please. He hates when I do this, but stand up. It gets better and better, let me tell you. No, John is doing a workshop this afternoon on family constellations, and I think he's going to tell you about it in a moment. But it is profound work to unlock ourselves from some of the unconscious loyalties that we have to our family system we don't even know about. So we can become free to express and explore who we are. There's a story it's been told, I don't know the original tradition or the author, but I first heard it in the Methodist church when I was about 8 years old. And I've heard it from other places too, but in a far-off kingdom, and I could do queendom, but just go with me on this. Let's not get hung up on pronouns for the sake of this story. In a far-off kingdom, there was a posting in the town square that said the king was throwing a banquet in honor of the crown prince. And everyone was welcome to come to the banquet and participate, provided they had royal clothing. And there was the town beggar who had never had money except just barely hand-to-mouth subsistence. And he saw the sign, he saw everyone welcome, and his heart just leapt. And then he saw, only if they have royal clothing. And he looked down at his tattered rags, which someone had given him in charity, and his heart sank again back into the hopelessness of his situation. And then some little glimmer of an idea of maybe it could be a little bit different. Have you ever had one of those? Sometimes they come really in the darkest of the dark nights of the soul. You get just a little spark that maybe this isn't the whole story of me. It may come through a teacher who will say, this really isn't who you are. It happened for this man, and he just thought, well, I've got a really crazy harebrained idea, but I'm just going to go for it. And he marched himself to the palace gate, and he went to the guard, and he said, I would like an audience with the king. The guard looked at him and said, excuse me? Why? And he said, I don't have to tell you why. I am a subject of the king, and I demand an audience with the king. So the palace guard went away and told the king, and sure enough, to the guard's shock and surprise, the king agreed to the audience. And so the beggar was ushered into the throne room, and he stood before the king, and he was terrified. He thought, do I have the courage to go ahead and do this crazy idea that came to me? He stepped up, and the king looked at him and said, what is your request? And this is what life will always do for you. Life is always saying, what is your request? What would you love? What would give you that freedom and fulfillment that your heart so desires? And the beggar, with his heart pounding in his chest, he said, I want to come to your banquet tomorrow, and I have only these tattered rags. But if you would give me one of your cast-off garments, I could come to the party, and it would cost you so little. You have so much. And the king was moved in his heart by the courage shown by this beggar. And he called the crown prince forward, and he said, I want you to take this man into your quarters, and I want you to give him any of your robes that he desires. And the prince knew his father was a weird guy and did strange things like this, and he knew that love was behind it. And so he agreed joyfully, and he took the beggar into his quarters, and he showed them his wardrobe and let him choose any garment. And he chose one that was maybe a little bit more modest, but it was still greater than anything he could have ever dreamed he would have on his body. And he put it on, and he felt different. He saw himself in the mirror, and he perceived himself as a different person of possibility and promise. And he looked down and saw his tattered rags lying on the floor, and he was taught to be frugal, to not waste anything. And so he thanked the prince, and he scooped up his rags, and he went home. The next night he was preparing to leave for the banquet, and he was preening a little bit in front of his small little mirror and saw how gorgeous he looked in this outfit, and he was about to walk out to the door for the banquet, and he again noticed the bundle of rags by the door, and he thought, well, unlikely, but what if someone would come in and take, really, they're my only possession. I'm going to take them with me. And so he bundled up the rags, and he went to the banquet, and it was as glorious a banquet as you can imagine in any of these stories. Just dishes that were so astounding in their richness and their sumptuousness. And the beggar had an amazing time, but he noticed that he was missing many of the great delicacies because he didn't want to drop his bundle of rags. And so many of the dishes went by him. But he had a wonderful time and a little sadness, and he went home. And before he left, the prince caught him and said, I notice you're still carrying your rags. I want you to know something about this garment that you're wearing. It will last your entire life. You have no need of those old rags. And he thanked him, and he didn't quite believe him. So for the rest of his days, he carried his bundle of rags. Some days he was so worried about tarnishing the royal robes, he would actually take them off and hide them and wear the old rags again. And finally, after years on his deathbed, he had a deathbed realization of that folly, of the unneeded pain that he had been carrying, that he could have just enjoyed these robes which were like new his whole life, and yet he had spent so much time carrying the old bundle. And he asked the king to come see him on his deathbed. And he confessed to the king his sorrow at having never released the old way. And he and the king wept together in sorrow and compassion. I have done that. I continue to do that. Where I hold the old pattern of belief about who I am as though it were precious treasure, and it is nothing but filth and rags. I had a teacher who would so often point out my filthy bundle and ask me to leave it behind. It's no longer serving you, Michael. And you do it. We all do it. So I love being taught by stories. I hope you do too. That we can all place ourselves in that character and see the ways that we're holding on to old ideas about who we are, old thoughts about scarcity and limitation, about illness and loneliness, all of these ways that we carry old things, and that's not who you are. And it never was. So this community, I do have a big church with beautiful campus and just so many things. I love lovely people, incredible people. We're celebrating our 100th anniversary this year at Unity of Houston. Yeah, it's been great. And there are things I really miss. I miss the consciousness of science of mind practitioners in the community. People who have been trained to hold consciousness of truth for you, to know your royalty. And I miss the culture of spiritual education. We have classes in Unity. It's not the same. So I encourage you to take full advantage of what is here for you, to dive deep into this teaching. You need both. You need the teaching and you need the community. It's like in AA we talk about we have the principles and we have the fellowship. It's the same thing. You have the conscious teaching, the principles, the practices that will, with time, they work. If you work them every single time, if you will simply do these simple practices to put these principles into play into your life, you will transform. You need that teaching, and you need people who will walk along beside you and that will remind you when you forget who you are, and that you can remind when they forget who they are. I think I said everything I need to say. One last thing. We love you and we honor you, and it's not just your brilliance. We honor your humanity too. We love your bigness and we love your smallness. Thank you for giving us a moment to really just see you, because you are incredible. And you are not perfect. I don't know if you know this. You know. Ask Reverend Karen. She can probably offer a little insight there. And you don't need to be. Just who you are changing this world, one life and one student at a time. I love you, Petra Weldes. Let's have a prayer. They make it hard for a minister to get over to this piano, I tell you. So I invite you now to just notice where you might be holding some tension or something in your body. Sometimes these messages and stories will bring up something, and just notice it and just breathe it out with your next exhalation. Let it go. Drop the shoulders. Relax the jaw. Relax the belly. And right here and now, come to this awareness where we together sit in this sacred place to recognize the truth that there is only one life, one power, one presence, one energy of good, of generosity. It is life itself. It is love itself. I call it God because that's the biggest word I know. But it is good, and it gives. The good of God flows forever from its own very nature into all of its expressions, and all of us are expressions of this one life. The good of God's blessings flows to us, through us, in us, as us. We are one with this infinite generosity and good. And so right now in this moment, I simply remember that. And I remember it for myself, and I remember it for my beloved friend Petra Weldes. I remember it for Reverend Karen Fry. I remember it for the entire leadership of this community. I remember it for everyone who considers CSLDallas their spiritual home. That the generosity of God is yours, is mine, is ours. And so what I speak is a word of openness and receptivity. In this moment of connection and remembrance, I remember for us all that life is good, that love is here, that all that we need is already given, awaiting our recognition and receivership. We remember. When I forget, will you remember for me? When I forget, will you remember for me? Help me see what you see when I forget. And so we bless this community of remembering for one another the truth that we are all divine, that we are all expressions of infinite love. We are all sons and daughters of the Most High. We are all together expressing God's good, God's power, God's love, God's light, God's joy, God's beauty. It's who we are. And in community, we can commit to remembering for ourselves and for one another. When you forget, I will remember for you. When you forget, I will remember for you. I will see what you can't see. When you forget, I will remember. When you forget, I will remember. When you forget. And so we remember together this great truth of the life of God living itself perfectly, wholly, freely as each of us. And we are filled with thanksgiving, with a sense of, as Thomas Troward said, cheerful expectancy that what is coming is greater than what we have known. We say yes to that. We give thanks. We let it be as it ever was and ever shall be, and as it is. And we signify this by saying together, and so it is.